It's all psychological. You yell barracuda. Everybody says, huh? What? You yell shark. We've got a panic on our hands on the 4th of July.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where this week we are returning to the world of Amity Island and Jaws. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Rocha. I'm a writer, producer, host, and voiceover artist in San Diego, California, and very excited to be reopening the doors to an old episode of ours to reassess Jaws and start from the beginning and talk about all the great stuff, Steve, because it is the 50th anniversary, which is kind of mind-blowing to consider right now.
Well, and I think you and I have agonized a fair amount over this choice because our first time we did Jaws, it wasn't one of the short ones at the very beginning of the show. No. It was a 2-hour episode with our great guest Eric Rogers, and we're proud of that episode, and I liked that episode, and you and I both have so much more to say about this film. And finally, it was a conversation with our advisory board on patreon.com/thecinefiles, and they all universally said that you guys should do it again. And we're so grateful to them, A, for their advice and support, but also to the support to everyone on Patreon as well as Apple Podcasts. We literally couldn't make the Cine-Files without you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you all so much. And that advisory board meeting was very illuminating to see how many people were so in support of us doing Jaws. And another way you can support us here on the Cine-Files is we have these wonderful sponsors that sponsor us here on the show. Washington Red Raspberries, True Diagnostic, quite a few of them, Hims, who support us on the show. So if you hear, when you're listening to the show, if you hear an ad that you like or a product that you're interested in, we would so encourage you to use our code so you can get some money off of this product as you try it out, but also let the sponsors know that supporting us is something they should continue to do. So that's another way you can support us here on the show.
So I would like to offer a formal statement before we begin the general discourse. I'm first of all, I'm really glad we're doing this movie. And we've often said this thing on the podcast, where as you come back to films at a different time in your life, you'll see different things. And man, is that true on this one.
Oh, yeah.
In particular, I feel like I just went through film school again watching this movie. I really do. And here's the epiphany I had, which is if you look at the list of the greatest films of all time, of which Jaws is 100% on that list for me, things like Lawrence of Arabia and Citizen Kane and Casablanca and Vertigo and Godfather and all those films, all of them have important themes. War, the Godfather is a king and his 3 sons. We have, the grand scope of Lawrence and the very, very internal and personal. All of America is in fucking Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
Jaws is a monster movie. I'm not saying that Jaws isn't deep or it doesn't have a lot to say, which I think it does. But I think what happens with this movie, you don't have a grand theme to make a grand movie. What you have is the unbelievable, incredible, shot-by-shot, moment-to-moment craftsmanship to make this one of the great films. And that was the big revelation watching it this time.
Yeah, I have to say I agree with you 100%. When we were preparing to do our live show on Jaws a few weeks ago, I rewatched the film and was just absolutely floored at how much this podcast that we do influence, and me getting a little older, influenced how I saw the movie and how much more I appreciated Spielberg's approach to the film. I took a course in the summer of 97 not 99, I think, or 2000 at Florida State. And it was all Steven Spielberg movies. I've talked about this on the show just only a couple times because I went into that course with Steven Spielberg as, he's a fun populist filmmaker. And yes, I appreciate him, but I don't really see him in the same conversation as Scorsese or Coppola. Like, that has been my predominant thought. Even after that course, which really dove into how he uses the son, how he alludes to his father and his mother's relationship, how he constructs these films and the things that drive him and inspire him, and what he wants his films to say. Even after that course was done, I didn't quite have that feeling that you would have after a course to feel like, yes, okay, now he's in the realm of Coppola or Scorsese. But rewatching Jaws this time around, and certainly seeing how Steven Spielberg's recent output has kind of taken an even more mature approach to some of these subjects, all of that in combination, I was watching Jaws, and you say you went back to film school. To me, I went back to that kid who was discovering films for the first time. And those moments when you go like, oh, he's angling it this way, or he's got the camera here for that reason, or he's close up here on them, and the dialogue here, I get it. Oh, the way he's constructing the narrative of how Brody eventually goes against the mayor to force him to do things he's doing. Oh, how Quint comes into this and how Quint's introduced and the way he shoots Quint. There was so much that I was now appreciating in this movie, that I had never quite appreciated the artistry and the brilliance of this film from Steven Spielberg. And now I'm ready to say that he is in the conversation for me personally with all of these greats from his who are his contemporaries.
For me, and I will stand by this statement. I believe that he is the greatest film director in history.
Wow.
And what I mean by greatest is very specific.
Yeah.
I don't mean he's the best, and I don't necessarily mean he probably is my favorite, actually, when you think about it. But there is no film director in history who has made popcorn successful movies, artistic movies, and over such a long period of time at such a high level of quality. There just isn't any. The only person I think that compares is Kurosawa. That's the only person who has those popular films, adventure films, dramatic films over 50 years. You know,
maybe I would throw Billy Wilder into the conversation, but that could be a fun conversation for a short. Sure. I think that would be a great conversation. But look, Steve, I absolutely hear what you're saying, and he is in the top echelon of the people who would qualify for that title.
Well, and the thing too about it, and I think why we failed to notice him and why the Academy failed to notice him and why is because he wants to make, it's funny, we just did a short on Box Office, which is available on Apple Podcast and on patreon.com/the Cine-Files if you're interested. And we were talking about how does Box Office affect quality and what does that mean? And it was a great, great conversation. But the thing about Spielberg that fits into that conversation, he doesn't want to tell you I am a great auteur filmmaker.
Right.
He wants you to have a great time in his movie.
Yes.
And have whatever experience he wants you to have. And so now that I'm watching Jaws this time, I was literally like every second, holy shit, look at that, look at that, look at that, look at that. Yeah. But none of that is noticeable to the audience. They're not seeing all of it because they're totally involved in the great, great story that he's telling you, you know?
He is a deceptively artistic, populist, mainstream filmmaker.
Well said, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what qualifies him when you look at it, especially his early stuff. You know, and I kind of want to go back and watch Close Encounters again and endure Richard Dreyfuss's performance. He gets on my nerves in that movie. But to see how he frames it, you know what I'm saying? It's almost, I would almost want to do an 8-hour class of just going through the film scene by scene or frame by frame to see how he approaches the emotions that he wants the audience to feel in certain moments and how he entertains you while also awing you and making you think, depending on the movie, you know.
So, John, how did you first come to Jaws?
Well, if people are maybe new, I don't know if we said this on the show in the first one because I didn't re-listen to it, but it was on TV. My parents left me alone to watch Jaws on the Sunday night, ABC Sunday night movie or something like that. And I watched the movie and it scared, I think I was 7 years old.
Oh my God.
I think so. 7 or 8 years old. And it scared the living hell out of me. And I was just the death of Quint will forever be the number one death in a film that destroyed me in my mind because it horrified me and made me sad because I immediately liked Quint as a kid. That's Robert Louis Steele. That's Treasure Island. That's Long John Silver. And so for me as a kid, that is my Long John Silver watching him on the screen. So I remember distinctly that whole film and what it did for me and how much I enjoyed it while also being terrified from it. And that's why to this day, I still rarely go past 4 feet of water in the ocean out of genuine fear. And I know Steve hates me to say this, but out of genuine fear of a shark attack or a shark attack, even though I know the odds are astronomically, insanely against that happening, I have that genuine fear of it because of it.
I don't hate you for saying that. That's the reality. That would be, there are literally millions of people that have exactly that fear.
Yeah,
It is
true.
still, sharks are still one of the top 10 things people say they're afraid of,
Yeah.
along with death and speaking in public, you know, like it's really high. So I mean, that's the reality. And how much of that is due to just the nature of sharks and how much of that is due to this movie?
Oh,
a lot of it's due to this movie.
100%. I would agree with that, Steve.
Well, and I'm glad you actually brought it up because as a huge fan of this movie, I also have made 2 great white shark documentaries, and I've been very, very bad about plugging my own work on this show. And so I have a lot of opinions on great white shark docs, and we made one that is available on Amazon called Great White Shark Beyond the Cage of Fear. But it's also available for free on YouTube, where they renamed it, which they didn't ask me. It's on a channel on YouTube for free, and they have renamed it Meet Bruce, the Great White Shark, because the great white shark that we followed was also named Bruce, as was the mechanical shark in Jaws, which was named for Steven Spielberg's lawyer, Bruce Braemar. So yeah, as we go along, I will have some things to say about actual sharks and actual reality.
Of course.
Because I think it's important to balance it out because, this movie scared the absolute crap out of a lot of people who still won't go into the oceans. And that's a thing we got to talk about.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure when I first saw Jaws. I certainly wasn't 7.
Okay.
I think I was 13 or 14, and it was rented on VHS, and I think I saw it at home, but I'm not 100% sure. And I really liked it, but I didn't start to really get into it probably until college.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And then I watched it many, 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 many times.
Yeah.
This is one of those stories in Hollywood where there is the movie and then there is the story behind the scenes of the movie. Right. And both of them are equally interesting. You know, this is up there with Apocalypse Now and The Godfather of just, and Casablanca of the craziest stories in Hollywood of how this thing actually got made. And of course, it starts with the book by Peter Benchley, who he grew up in New York, but he spent summers on Nantucket. So he was one of those non-locals who came into the summer that he used to fish for sharks.
Wow.
And then he kind of was working. He wanted to be a writer, and he was working as a reporter in various newspapers and things. And then he ended up very briefly being a speechwriter for Lyndon Johnson. Something I didn't know about him.
Trial by fire.
And there's a documentary that came out in 1971 called Blue Water, White Death. And this was really the first real great white shark documentary. It was made by a filmmaker named Peter Kimball. Benchley saw it. He also heard a story about some fisherman who caught a really big shark, which sort of created the model for Quint at the beginning. And he goes to the editor he's been working with and says, "What would you think about a shark book?" And the guy said, "Sure." And he knocks out this shark book. And the only thing they couldn't figure out was what to call it. And they had all these pretentious titles like The Leviathan and Horror of the Deep. And they kept, and it's getting to 2 days before they have to print the book.
Yeah.
and the publisher's going like, "No, seriously, we need a title." And the only word they could agree on was a word that was part of a whole bunch of titles, because they had Jaws of Mystery and Jaws of Death and Jaws of the Deep and Jaws kept popping up. And finally someone just said, "Well, let's just call it Jaws." And Benchley was like, "Well, what does that mean?" And they're like, "It just sounds good." And he went, "All right, sounds good." So they put out, it hasn't come out yet, but it already has gotten picked. And younger listeners won't know what these things are, but there were these things called the Book of the Months Club and the Reader's Digest. I think the Reader's Digest still exists. I'm not sure of the Book of the Month Club, but this was it was like Oprah's book club of the time. If you got picked for one of these things, this was a big deal. And he was picked for both.
Wow.
Yeah. So this, it hasn't come out yet. And I didn't realize this. So the 2 producers on this movie are David Brown and Richard Zanuck. I didn't realize that David Brown was married to Cosmo editor Helen Gurley Brown.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And as the galleys, which is the early drafts of the book before it's being published, is being sent out to newspapers and magazines and different places to build up buzz, she reads it and says to her husband, "David, you should take a look at this." He and Richard Zanuck, and they're extreme. Richard Zanuck is the son of Daryl Zanuck, famous Hollywood impresario. And they are an extremely successful producers team. In fact, what they just finished on was a little movie called The Sting, which became the most successful movie of all time. So these are successful guys. They both read the book in one night. They call each other the next day and said, this is the most exciting thing we've ever seen. And they immediately buy it. And I've seen both. It was either bought for $175,000 or $450,000 or somewhere in between, because I've seen both of those numbers. I'm not sure which one is true. And what Brown says is that had they read the book twice, they would never have bought it.
Wow.
Because the first excitement was just, this is an amazing story. And they weren't thinking about, this will be impossible to make.
That's fair.
And now they're looking for like, well, who is going to direct this shark movie? And so they thought about movies that take place on the ocean and have an adventurous story. And they looked at The Old Man in the Sea, directed by John Sturges.
Oh, yeah.
So they're trying to have John Sturges do it. And then that falls through. And then they go to a guy named Dick Richards. And he doesn't have a huge career. He's done a few things, but nothing terribly important. And they go, okay, and they hire him. And we're going to work with this guy, Dick Richards. At the same time, they've also produced another little movie called The Sugarland Express, directed by Steven Spielberg. Now, you know what's crazy, John? We have done many Spielberg movies on the show. Yeah. We've never really done a bio of Spielberg.
Oh.
And I don't have one here. Okay. But here's the prediction that I'm going to make.
Yes.
At some point, I don't know that it's 2026 or 2027 or 2028. I think we're going to have to do the season of Spielberg.
We might have to do the half year of Spielberg, to be honest. But yes, it's a fair point. Sure.
So we'll dig in deeper there. But needless to say, this is a very young guy who showed up. You know, he started as a professional director at 21. He was directing Joan Crawford in Night Gallery at 22. Yeah. Like, it's just totally wild to me. Then he makes a TV movie called Duel, which I'm sure you've seen, and anyone who's a real cinephile, you should check it out.
It's basically a dry run at Jaws, with an 18-wheel truck, or a truck rather, and Dennis Weaver being hounded by this truck with no name.
Yeah, it is so well. It's so well made, and it has this really rare distinction, which is that this is a TV movie.
Yes.
But people liked it so much, it got a theatrical release. And that essentially never happens.
Yes.
You know? And that leads to him doing Sugarland Express, which I had never seen until about 6 months ago.
Oh, wow.
And I watched it, and it's not like I love the movie.
Right.
But it's more like you can see it. You can just see the guy, you know? And so he's doing post on Sugarland, and Zanuck and Brown are the producers. So he swings by the office, and as he's chatting with them, he looks down at the desk, and there's these galleys, this sheet of paper that says the word Jaws on it. And he just goes, "What's this?" And they say, "Oh, it's this project, this shark project we're doing with this other director." And it might be, I couldn't quite get the story. It might be that he stole the galleys to read them. But I'm not 100%, but he did read them, and he came back. He's like, "Are you sure you got another director? Because I really." And the thing he literally, by the way, said exactly what you said. He said it feels like a sequel to Duel.
Yes,
you know.
Right.
And the other thing he said, and both Jaws and Duel have four letters, so this really makes sense. Which makes no sense to me.
But you hear the stories of Spielberg at the beginning, and you see he was so determined to be successful. He knew exactly what he wanted to do from a very early age. One of the rare people on the planet who knows exactly what they want to do and pursues it all the way to the end and is successful at it, doing it, and is still doing it all these years later. You know, we hear the legendary stories about him faking having an office on the lot. Yep. Talking to John Ford and all, getting tips from him as a director, which they do in Welcome the Fablemans, I think is what it's called. And then you hear that he's a guy who just singularly is driven to succeed and achieve his success at a young age. So it does not surprise me at all that he saw something here on the desk, read it, and was immediately like, "Are you sure you got the right guy for this?" Immediately trying to essentially steal the girl from the other guy, essentially, is what he's doing. Yeah,
totally. I think, we've talked about before, there are certainly directors who are horrible assholes.
Yes.
And Spielberg's not one of those directors.
No.
Spielberg is a guy that you want to work with. But
you don't want to fuck with.
There's steel, man.
Yeah.
That guy, and a lot of that steel, we're about to go into the tempering, the making of Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
It's not that he wasn't brilliant and talented and everything. He had all that stuff.
Right.
But he had to get broken and go through the crucible that is Jaws to become the great director that we know today.
It's a great point. Yeah, absolutely.
Zanuck and Brown, the one thing they decided is there are all these backstories in the book.
Yeah.
Which I will go because I did reread the book before we did this. So we'll talk about a little of those. And they basically said, cut them all. And part of their deal is that Peter Benchley is going to do the first pass on the screenplay. So he does 3 versions of the script. And as they start to work on it, this other director they've hired, Dick Richards, he's doing this weird thing, is that he's talking to Zanuck and Brown and he's going, okay, so when they go out to hunt the whale and they say, no, it's not a whale, it's a shark. He goes, right, shark. So anyway, after the whale attacks, and like, no, and he keeps talking about it as a whale.
Wow.
And they kind of go, because he's obsessed with Moby Dick and Ahab and some of those things. And so he just keeps saying it. And they finally go, we really like working with Steven on Sugarland Express. And this guy can't even call it a shark. And so they fire him and they do bring on Steven Spielberg.
He talked himself out of the job.
Yeah. And so Benchley's writing his script. Spielberg comes on, and it's Benchley. He's not a screenwriter, and he did his 2 passes and basically said, "Yeah, I've done the best that I can. Here you go, and move along." So now they don't have a writer, and so Spielberg goes to write a script. Yeah. Now Spielberg is not a writer, and he would tell you he's not a writer. I think he has screenwriting credit on maybe 2 of his projects. I don't remember which ones. But what he said was he had to take the book and make it his movie. And so the process, he knew that no one was going to shoot his script. It's not even clear how many people ever read the version that Spielberg wrote. Right. But it was his process to go through and get to know the film. And there are a couple of key scenes that come out of that, like the pot roast scene. That's a Spielberg scene. Right. But in general, he knew this wasn't going to be the script. And he's talking to Zanuck and Brown, and he's like, okay, Benchley's gone. I need a writer. And they said, what about Howard Sackler? And Howard Sackler is the Pulitzer Prize winning playwright of a movie that I know you love, which is The Great White Hope.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And Spielberg, again, this makes no sense to me, but this is what he said. He went, Great White Hope, Great White Shark, makes sense to me.
This sounds like a legend. This sounds like, revisionist legend from Spielberg to make it seem fun. Yeah.
I mean, it's really funny. So obviously we've done this movie before.
Yeah.
It was already a movie I knew well.
Yeah.
But I tried to study everything I could to prepare for this. And so there was a documentary made in the 70s, like a classic behind the scenes thing. I watched that. Yeah. There was a documentary made, I think, on the 15th anniversary where Roy Scheider was there and a bunch of other people. Yeah. And I watched that. Then there's a documentary made on the 25th anniversary.
Yes.
And then there's Jaws at 50 that just came out.
Yes.
So I've watched over 6 hours of behind the scenes documentaries on Jaws. And what's interesting about them, they're actually all different.
Yeah, of course they are.
And they say different things. Yeah. And it's like, and I would say Jaws at 50 is the best film. Like if you're going to watch something, it's good. But some of these all these little tidbits and these things that Spielberg says, some of these are all consistent, so.
Yeah.
So, and Sackler said, and I've never heard this before. He said, sure, I'll do a pass on it, but don't give me credit because I don't have time to finish it. And so, because he had like another gig he had to start. And he said, so I'll work on it for this amount of time, but I shouldn't have the credit.
That is surprising. Okay.
Yeah. And it sounds like with Sackler, a lot of the characters really got better defined. And that what David Brown says, and this is an expression I love about screenwriting, was he says that it was Sackler that broke the back of the story.
Oh.
That's what that expression means is sort of figuring out the crux. What is this? Because you have a book that has a whole bunch of stuff. Right. And a movie has to be simplified down to what is the spine? And it sounds like Sackler's the guy who found it.
Wow.
But then he's gone.
Right.
Because he had another gig. And Spielberg was thinking several things. He needed another writer. He wanted there to be a lot of improv in the movie. Because when he did, which there is, because when he did Sugarland, he hired a bunch of locals and had them improvise scenes or wrote things on the set for the locals that they hired. And he really liked that. So he wanted a writer who was comfortable in improv, and he also wanted some comedy. He felt we needed some funniness. It had to be a funny movie between all the, otherwise it's just going to be too heavy.
Right.
And so he brings on Carl Gottlieb. Now, Carl Gottlieb is a well-known actor, improviser, writer, and comedian.
Yes.
And he is from a group called The Committee. And The Committee is not one that people talk about very much. A lot of people talk about Second City, and you hear about the Groundlings or Upright Citizens Brigade. The Committee was another one of those, started in the 60s, and guys like David Ogden Stiers was in it, Howard Hessman, Mel Stewart, Rob Reiner, Del Close, one of the great improvising teachers of all time, was part of The Committee. And Gottlieb wrote for the Smothers Brothers show. He wrote for the Bob Newhart show. He wrote for All in the Family and The Odd Couple. And that's who's coming on to be the new writer on Jaws. And Spielberg said, what part would you like to play? And he said, I want to play like the public relations guy, who shows up a lot. But what he described was, he's like, basically my job was to rewrite the script, slowly cutting down his own part to nothing. One other claim to fame is that Carl Gottlieb has one of the great character names in any movie ever, which is in the film The Jerk.
Yeah.
Carl Gottlieb plays Iron Balls McGinty. I mean, that's a good name.
That is a good name.
Now we come to the fateful decision. The decision that makes this movie absolutely impossible to make, and is one of the reasons why it's the greatest films of all time. Because what Spielberg felt, he'd just done Sugarland, all shot on location, and before that he had shot Duel. And when he had the gig to shoot Duel, the TV producers and executives said, yeah, so we're going to put you on the stage, and for all these driving shots, you're just going to do process shots. So they're going to be on a stage with a fake background playing. And Spielberg said, I can't do that. I can't make this movie on a stage. We got to go out in real cars and real driving in a real world. And they said, okay. And Duel's a huge success.
Right.
Sugarland's all on location. So when they're getting ready to shoot Jaws, Zanuck and Brown says, you should do what every other movie that ever has taken place on the water has done in the history of Hollywood, basically, which is shoot in a tank or a lake and fake it. And Spielberg says, no, we have to shoot this movie in the ocean.
That's fascinating to me, because I wonder how much of that is driven by competition. You know, like he is in the contemporaries.
Totally.
With Coppola, with Scorsese at the time, Hal Ashby, quite a lot of William Friedkin, quite a lot of 70s directors, right? So the idea of being on location, I got to shoot it on location. There's an authenticity to it. I want to be able to deliver that with a film. I imagine that's a part of the inspiration here for him as well. Like, I want to show I can do it.
I think it's a great point, because if you look at the 70s filmmaking, they're not on the studio lot,
Right. Yeah.
He wanted a real island, he wanted a real ocean, he wanted real boats, and he wanted a real working mechanical shark. So, and we'll get into the shark and what the problems were and how it worked later on. But basically, the shark team comes on, and they were given a schedule of a year and a half to figure out how to make this thing that has never been done before work.
Wow.
And this is like January. And then there's a rumor, and we've heard this many times before. You know what, John? The SAG contract is coming up.
Ooh.
And there might be a strike. And there are dates which, if a film did not start at this date, when the contract is up, that film will have to shut down. And now we are faced with a choice. We either shoot soon, or we wait for maybe a year or more.
Yeah.
For the SAG contract. And they decide they must start shooting in April.
Oh.
So they gave this team a year and a half to build the shark, and then came back to them a few weeks later and said, no, you got to do it in 3.5 months.
Good God.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this is what's so crazy about this is that, so we just did Superman.
Yes.
And in Superman, the big test was, will you believe that a man can fly?
Right.
That's the big special effects thing they had to figure out. And they did figure out, and we did believe it. And that movie is a huge success. This is a movie where the big thing they had to figure out is the special effect of a shark.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't figure it out. They never made this shark work. And that is why this movie is a success. One of the biggest reasons it's a success is they make the wrong choice to push up the schedule, to force the shark to be done when it's not ready. And that fucks up all sorts of things that lead to this being one of the great films of all time.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's amazing.
So shoot is scheduled for 55 days. Steven Spielberg spent 159 days shooting this movie.
Wow. That's almost 6 months, right? Like a little over 5 months. Good.
I think it's it's long, and dude's 26.
Right. I mean, that's the thing that's amazing. When you know what you want to do in your 20s, and time is being spent doing the thing that you love is a gift. You know, I mean, look at Wells doing Kane at 24, 23 years old. You know, you have these young filmmakers in their 20s tackling these massive tasks, and it's always thrilling to see them being able to do it, you know?
I mean, I was 25 when I showed up at film school, and to use an expression of yours, filled with piss and vinegar, totally arrogant, believed I was going to be Steven Spielberg or something like that. And looking back at it, the idea that at that age, Spielberg was handling a production the size and insanity of Jaws is mind-boggling.
Some people are just built a certain way from birth, and clearly Spielberg was built a certain way to handle this responsibility and have the doors open for him, you know. And so it's so interesting and he was the right director at the right time for this situation, clearly, because I don't know if we would have gotten a great Jaws film out of John Sturges or out of Dick Richards that would rival what we got from Steven Spielberg with Jaws.
I mean, it's so hard because it's like it would be an entirely different thing.
Right.
And honestly, I mean, there are John Sturges movies that I like, but I don't put him at the Spielberg level, you know. Dick Richard, on the other hand.
Yeah. Dick Jones. Anyway. Yeah.
Dick Jones. John.
Yes.
Would you like to get into the movie?
Oh, man, are we getting in the boat? All right. We got to get in the boat.
So we start obviously with the titles. And the first thing is it's in the black. And I think this is a great choice. And this won the Oscar for Best Sound is we hear whale song right at the very beginning of the film. And then you hear two notes. It is an alternating E and F. It is played ostinato on a double bass. And it is among the most iconic themes in the history of film scoring.
John Williams, man. John Williams. Again, a young guy too, establishing himself as a composer. And here comes a film like this. And you just, you know, this is 2 years or 3 years before Superman. And he's doing this perfect theme song for this movie. And I do want to give a shout out to Verna Fields, who edited the film. I think it's so smart, whether it's her or Spielberg, who decided to open the film with just no rousing score or nothing, just the simplicity of the credits on the screen and massive letters of names across this black frame to kind of establish a little bit of the mood. And then we're into the theme song as we're roaming the bottom of the ocean.
When they're finishing the cut and Williams is starting to work on the music, he calls up Spielberg and says, I think I found the shark theme. And Spielberg comes over to his house very excited, and he's expecting to hear some mysterious, big, you know, powerful orchestral thing. Yeah. And John Williams sits down at the piano and with one finger goes, dun, dun. And Spielberg's like, what? He goes, dun, dun. And Spielberg's like, you're kidding. And just laughs because he thinks this is a joke. And John Williams is like, no, this is it. This is the theme for the shark. And then he starts playing it and explaining it. And Spielberg, and it's so funny because whenever you're going, particularly with a composer, you go to meet the composer and you're going to hear the music for the first time. And frequently, it's not going to be what you expect. And you got that a director has to have a poker face, you know, and sort of deal with it. And then what happens is, if it's good, and this is what happened to Spielberg, is as his brain shifted. You know what I mean? He had an image in his head of what this score was going to sound like. And when he first heard the two notes, he went, well, I can't do that. And then he understood what Williams was saying and the power of these two notes, because one of the things that happens in music is like they start on the double bass. Yeah. And then we have that French horn come in and there's that adventurous counter theme. But then we're going to add the tuba and we're going to add more strings. And then it's going to be the horror orchestra. If the shark's coming towards us, it can accelerate. It can get louder or softer as it's closer or farther. It can go up the scale as it ascends, down the scale as it descends. Suddenly, you have this active thing that's just created with these two notes. And then the final movement is super dissonant.
Brilliant.
And it is John Williams is kind of referencing the shower moment in Psycho, where you have that weep right at the end before we cut to the campfire, and it's played with, high strings and either a piccolo or a flute. And then we have that hard cut to the campfire. The sound field is totally different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like you went from one world shockingly to this other world.
Yeah.
This is shot, of course, at Martha's Vineyard. No movies had ever been shot here before.
Huh.
There are a lot of reasons why they shot in Martha's Vineyard. Obviously, the architecture and the town and the locals were really important because they knew they wanted to cast a lot of locals. So that was really important. But the big reason they shot at Martha's Vineyard was it is the only place on the Atlantic coast that has 12 miles of sandy bottom ocean that's about 30 to 35 feet deep.
Huh.
Because they have to, that's the only way they can have this shark, which is on this big trailer that has to sit on the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
So if you had uneven surfaces or really deep, you can't shoot the movie.
Right.
So they shot it because of the topography of the ocean.
Smart. Really smart. Yeah, I like this change. And what do you think? What do you think, Steve? Why do you think we start with being the shark from the point of view of the shark roaming around the bottom of the ocean? Is that to scare us even more? Is that to make a commentary on us? Like, why do you think he starts with that before we make that jump cut or hard cut to them on the beach there at the bonfire?
That is a great question. And I have an answer,
Okay.
I think, which is I actually think, there's a million great things about this movie.
Sure.
But to me, among the most important magic tricks, I was going to mention this later on, but what happened? So when Spielberg took the gig, the thing in his brain, he grew up on double features and monster movies and Ray Harryhausen movies and those kinds of things. Right. And so in his brain, he was thinking about Ray Harryhausen. He was thinking about a monster movie. Huh. And that's why we have this mechanical shark. And the thrill of watching the Ray Harryhausen movie is seeing the Cyclops.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's seeing the creature or the monster or whatever, the skeleton battle. That's the thrill.
Totally.
So in Spielberg's brain, this was a movie where we were going to see the shark.
Wow.
Because the shark didn't work, Spielberg says, I had to switch from trying to be a director like Ray Harryhausen to trying to be a director like Alfred Hitchcock.
Oh.
And because what Alfred Hitchcock is doing is that the tension is living in you.
Yes.
Is that he's setting up the situation. So you're not necessarily seeing anything. You're worried about everything. So my answer to your question is I think we hear the shark theme and feel like we're part of the shark because Spielberg is creating the shark in our brain. And it's the shark that's in our brain that's going to scare the fuck out of us through the whole movie. And by having it, if we just start at the campfire, the shark's not in our brain.
Right.
But if you start with the shark and then you go to the campfire and now you're heading towards the water, well, we know what's in the water.
Right. The sense of impending doom is almost from the first few seconds of the movie and carries throughout the entire film until the end. Yeah, great point.
I think this movie does such a great job of creating the reality of these people in this island at this time.
Oh, yeah.
And the campfire is a perfect example, you know. Like,
if you watch it and just kind of watch this scene over and over again, each of these extras has such vibrant life. And it is so believable how they are interacting with each other, how it just feels like any normal type of get together, right? And we get to Cass, and he is just doing that thing that some of us have experienced, where you're at a party and everyone is talking or whatever, but then you see someone across the room or you see someone a little way away from you, and you immediately can tell that there's a spark between you of interest. And those are great moments in life. And so to have that happen after we've just experienced this kind of unsettling opening to the movie, I think is a real smart way to get us into the film and connected to the film because of what's about to happen.
So we're with this character, Cassidy, and this is played by a local, Jonathan Filley. And this is the crazy thing about this movie. There are essentially only 8 actors who came from LA.
Yeah.
Everybody else that you meet is a local from the island.
Right.
Which is really pretty amazing. And it's funny. So wardrobe gave him a bunch of quote unquote beach clothes to wear.
Yeah.
That were very like what an LA wardrobe person would think a person would wear to the beach. And he was like, I wouldn't really wear this. And Spielberg went, well, what would you wear? And he brought his own clothes, and Spielberg's like, oh, that's perfect. So these are his clothes that he's wearing.
Guerrilla filmmaking, man. Guerrilla filmmaking. That's how it works. And Jonathan Filley is an interesting character in terms of his impact in Hollywood, because this was the only thing he ever acted in. Just this scene was the only thing he's ever acted in. He became a location manager in the 1980s for films like Tootsie, Purple Rose of Cairo, Angel Heart, Madonna's Who's That Girl, Regarding Henry into the 90s. But then also started working as a production manager into the 90s for Three Men and a Little Lady, Boomerang, Honeymoon in Vegas. One of the films that I can't remember if we've done, but I hope we do one day, Searching for Bobby Fischer.
We've not.
We haven't done it. I would love to do that film. He was a production manager for Elf, Inside Man, American Gangster, Da 5 Bloods for Spike Lee.
Wow.
Then became an associate producer in the 90s as well for films like Guarding Tess, The Imposters, The Siege, and Inside Man. He was a co-producer in Inside Man and American Gangster. Sex and the City, co-producer for that film version of the show. Then moving into doing Elementary. Wow. He was a producer for Elementary. He's a co-EP for Blacklist, the James Spader show. He was a producer on Succession, the very successful HBO show recently. And his credits go all the way to Before, which is the new Billy Crystal series that was on Apple TV in 2024. So he's a guy that has such an interesting career, but a very memorable opening to a classic movie, and it was the only thing he ever acted in. So fascinating stuff.
What impresses me most about the resume is it's like the tortoise and the hare. That is the slow and steady wins the race. Because he started as like associate producer, co-producer. He's like all the the smaller jobs,
right?
But he's a producer on Succession. I mean, that's a huge show. He spent literally 50 years working his way up. That's really impressive. I saw so much stuff when we did this movie, and I'm going to point out many of the things that I saw, and some of them are very little, but I'm watching in this first shot of him. He smokes a cigarette, he exhales, and the smoke comes out, and then we cut to Chrissy, and there's smoke from the fire that goes across her face. And this is this is Verna Field's master editing shit, is I really think in just the tiniest way, the exhaled smoke from his cigarette pulls you across to the cut to Chrissy, you know?
Yeah.
And that's a totally, totally tiny little thing that I have watched this movie 30, 40, 50 times and never saw until this time. Chrissy is Susan Backlini. Yeah. I think she is, at this moment, she's like the perfect 70s American girl of this type.
Yeah, it's fascinating because she's almost like an introvert sitting by herself away from everybody and is kind of doing her own thing. And she has the sweetest smile. There's almost like a Sissy Spacek quality to her from the 1970s in how and the fact that Steven films this with like the smoke rising up, she almost looks otherworldly, right? And like almost something out of a druid thing where she's coming out of the smoke, and he is just like transfixed with her. So the way they frame her, I think, is fantastic as well. And she passed away recently in 2024 in Ventura, California, but she was in 1941. I think you remember her butt in 1941 on the Periscope. She came back to reprise what she did in Jaws for 1941. She was also in The Quest. She was also in The Great Muppet Caper as the ballet performer, and her last credit is an episode of The Fall Guy, if you remember that show, Steve, from back in the day.
Of course.
The Fall Guy with Lee Majors, which they just recently did a version of with Ryan Gosling here. But she's a former stunt woman who specialized in swimming work. She was a former wild animal trainer and sports diver. And here's an interesting part. She owned and trained a bear whose growls were later recorded for use as the voice of Chewbacca, according to a tweet from Peter Mayhew himself. So interesting stuff with her overall. But yeah, it's a fantastic role that's very memorable for what we're about to see.
I just want to review that Chrissy, who was killed by a shark, owned a bear that became the voice of Chewbacca. It's like a weird, this is a weird sentence. And again, the storytelling with Steven Spielberg is always crystal clear. Yeah. You always understand exactly what he wants you to understand. And there's smiles back and forth. Yeah. And then she looks out at the beach and he gets up and goes to her. The composition is gorgeous. They're talking. It doesn't matter. We don't hear what they're saying. And then she gets up and runs and he runs after her.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is just what you want when you're at the bonfire at the beach and there's the cute girl and you don't even have words and she smiles and then it's that telepathic communication that's happening between them.
This is youth. This is young. This is the things that happen when you're young,
Yeah.
I love it.
What's so great about this, I think, is that without really any dialogue, you're 100% clear on who these two young people are.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a universal relatability to that moment. Yes, for sure.
Like, for instance, we know that they don't know each other,
Yes, clearly.
What's your name again?
Chrissy.
There's something iconic about Chrissy,
It's almost fantasy-like. Like I said, like she's in the smoke, so she's almost ethereal, some kind of magical being. She's set herself apart from the entire circle there by herself. And he's running after her. She's taken off. And so it's like this uncatchable thing, right? This like sprite or whatever. And so you're caught up in it. Even the way this is shot, from what we just saw the fire to what we see here as either the sun rising or sun setting. And I think it's beautiful, the cinematography here she runs across. And so you're caught up in it because, I mean, we've all been that place. Well, at least a lot of us have been in that place where you're figuratively or literally chasing after the girl and she's giving you little clues or hints as you're chasing after her. And so there's a universality to this. It works so well, Steve.
Well, you see the magical girl across the room or across the bonfire in this case. And the thing is, I think, again, I will say, I think Steven Spielberg is the greatest storyteller in film history. And I think it is perfectly clear that she wants him to chase her.
Oh, of course. 100%. Yes.
Where are we going?
Swimming.
And again, she's in control. She's saying, I have decided what we're doing. And she's running. And as she's running, she starts taking off her jacket. And the dude, it's so funny at the beginning of this movie because he's struggling to keep up because he's drunk.
Slow down. I'm not drunk. Slow down.
And then there's this moment. And this is, look, say whatever you want to say about how our treatment of the sexes and gender and attraction has changed. But the moment she starts taking off her top and it's continuing to run towards the water is A, sexy as hell, and B, he's going to keep trying to catch up with her,
Yeah, well, I think the way she's presented in the film as this kind of sprite who's in control. Yeah. It's a free spirit. And this is the 70s. And so her taking off her clothes as she jumps into the water in context makes all the sense in the world. And it's clearly she's a very attractive woman and jumping in and all of that is cute, but it's more a matter of like his incompetence the humor of the scene and his inability to take off his clothes to be able to join her is what balances out the nudity really well in this section of the scene.
Well, and I love the moment of him. He says, I'm coming. And then she takes off her shirt and he goes,
I'm definitely coming.
Yeah. And then we're at the dune and he's desperately trying to catch up to her and take his clothes off. And he pulls his shirt over his head and then tumbles down the dune. It's all really funny.
Yes. He's drunk and exhausted and he can't do it. Yeah.
And the shot of her running naked into the ocean, and it's like they hit the perfect exposure and the perfect lighting and the perfect framing. So it is 100% clear that she's naked.
Yeah.
And you can't see it,
Right, exactly.
It's right at that spot.
Yeah.
And of course, this is the thing. We know what movie we're watching.
Yeah.
We're watching Jaws, even if you've seen it for the first time. And so she swims out in the water into the black and the sun is just starting to come up and he is silhouetted. By the way, the director of photography is Bill Butler. And I think, I'll tell you something about this. So every time I saw this movie, probably the first 10 times at least, it was on TV or on VHS.
Right.
And so I didn't actually really know. And VHS transfers back in the day, they were terrible.
They were rough. Yeah.
So I really didn't understand that Jaws was a beautiful movie until I got my first Laserdisc. And then I was like, it was like seeing a totally different film. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, the new 4K adaptation that came out just a few months ago is gorgeous in appreciating the cinematography of the film as well.
It's stunning.
I can swim. Just can't walk or dress myself.
Oh, dudes being unable to hang with the lady when she puts it on the table.
So we leave the comedy on the shore. She swims out. She swims backstroke. She does the beautiful kind of leg up and sinks down. And then in that iconic shot, her head pops up into frame. with the ocean in the background, the horizon at the right spot. Would you remember the moment in The Fabelmans at the end where young Steven Spielberg Fabelman goes to see John Ford,
Yes.
who says the thing about the horizon?
Yeah.
Horizon at the top, good. Horizon at the bottom, good. Horizon in the middle, bad. Or whatever he says. Look at this shot. In fact, look throughout Jaws and see where the horizon is. It's always in the right spot. Always looks gorgeous.
Yeah. As I said, this is one of those big things that I learned in the Steven Spielberg class I took at Florida State, is that the sun and the horizon are huge deals in his movies. So, yeah.
Come on in the water!
There's an underwater shot looking up at her, the sun kind of glowing in the distance behind. It's beautiful. And now we get welcome back, Mr. Williams. John Williams' music comes in. And John Williams uses what are called leitmotifs. We've explained this before, but I'll say it again, which is a leitmotif is, a musical theme that can be assigned to something and replayed. And a lot of it comes from Wagner. So there was in the Ring of the Niebling, there's a theme for the Ring and a theme for Brunhilde and a theme. There are all these themes. And that's what John Williams is doing. And I'm going to give you, these are my names for the themes. These are not officials. But what we hear now is what I call the Mystery of the Deep, which is a music that's going to play anytime we're sort of the vast expanse of the ocean and we don't know what's going on. And it's harp, it's high woodwinds, there's arpeggios, and she's swimming above us as we're listening to this music, and she's smiling, and it feels very free. And again, I'll say the same thing for the underwater shots as well. The nudity is handled absolutely perfectly, I think.
Just a hint.
And then you hear the shark theme. And this is one of the things about this movie. In a lot of horror movies, the filmmakers cheat you, which is they set you up for a scare by playing the scary music, even when it's going to be a cat that jumps out of the cabinet or someone turns around a corner.
Right.
This movie never does that. The only time you hear the shark theme is when the shark is there. John Williams does not cheat.
Right. Yeah.
So it comes towards us, and the closer it gets, it starts off with that double bass, and the closer it gets and the more active it is, the more instruments come in. And we're up at the surface, she's still treading water, and then she gets hit with that music sting.
Again, we are the shark's point of view, Steve. Again. Yeah. And I think this is obviously what we've heard with Spielberg, like, I couldn't get the shark to work, so how can I make the people feel the shark? Well, put them in the point of view of the shark, and that gives us a chill. Even though we're seeing it from the shark's point of view, we are feeling the stress and the tension and the horror of what's about to happen and the impending doom. Like, we can't stop it, the helplessness,
And the way these sort of jerky movements work is that she's tied to a rope. The rope goes down to the bottom, which is fairly shallow, through a hook that goes up to the beach. So someone on the beach can pull the rope and it'll pull her down.
Right.
The very first hit, that's pulled by Steven Spielberg. And you could see in her performance, it's like she doesn't know what's happened.
Yes.
Something has happened, but she doesn't know what's going on.
How could you possibly put that in context, right?
And then she gets pulled down and it's silent. And again, the way they play with sound and silence, because it's just like, oh my God, is she gone? And then she comes up screaming and is thrown back and forth, left to right. And here's how they did this. So she's tied to a rope. The rope goes out to the beach. There are 5 guys on 2 different directions of the rope, and they've made lines on the beach. And so what they're doing is the 5 guys are pulling one way to one line and then pulling the other way, dragging her back and forth. Right. But here's the scary thing. When you are acting like you're drowning and in deep, deep trouble in the water, how do they know if you're in actual deep trouble in the water? Like if they pull her under and she takes up some water down her throat and suddenly she is drowning, it's going to look the same. And so what she did, she went to a hardware store and got some kind of clip. So basically, if she panics, if something goes south, she can unhook herself. Because she doesn't want to depend on them. Right. And the other thing that makes this really scary is that Bill Butler built a camera box because Spielberg said, I want the camera not to just be an underwater shot and not to just be an above water shot, but to be an at water level shot. So it's half in, half out, or could do either. Well, no one had done that before. They had to build a very special camera housing in order to do this. So and I think that ocean level shot is part of what makes it so scary.
Oh, 100%. I think another director shoots this from the God's eye view, like just above, and you're watching her do whatever. The fact that you feel like you're in the water next to her is genius. And when she pops back up, and this is a great performance in this moment because it doesn't work without her screams. It doesn't work without her yelps. It doesn't work without her, as you said, Steve, her breathing. And then the way that's all framed as we're seeing all of that happen. And when she pops back up and then has this moment of respite on the buoy, I think it's a brilliant beat that adds even more to the horror of it all because it's just a temporary moment of relief and she cannot process it. The shock on her face and the reaction to everything is a desperation there that I think is, so painful to watch.
And then you contrast that with the quick cut to the guy just basically passed out on the beach.
Right.
And it's like, oh, no help. Like has no idea this is going on. Mm-hmm. Back to her. She's splashing, screaming. She gets to the buoy. And it's like this moment of safety, like this moment of respite. And she's just holding on. And then when she gets pulled away and she's screaming, and now the sound of her screaming is gurgling in the water, you know? Yeah. It's very upsetting. And here's how they did it. Because this is ADR. So they record this after. And basically, they bring in this actress, who, Chrissy, into the ADR booth, and Spielberg is there with a water pitcher, and she has her mouth open, and he is pouring water into her mouth as she does the. I'm like, it literally sounds like he's waterboarding her.
What the fuck, man?
It's funny. You talk to her. She's a stunt woman, and she's thrilled about it. She's like, I don't mind going through some real discomfort in order to get this thing right. That's what she says.
Oh, the 70s.
Yeah,
they don't do that now in voiceover booths for stuff like that.
And then she comes straight in front of cameras, screaming at the top of her lungs, and then boom, she's pulled down. And it's quiet.
It's so perfect. It's just a few seconds and it's over. That's the horror of it all. Your life is done in a few seconds,
I really think Chrissy going swimming is among the scariest and most perfect sequences ever put on in a movie.
Yeah, people talk about opening sequences, right? Like, what are the best opening sequences? This has to be in the conversation for top 10 because this absolutely, how can I say this? This solidifies the terror that you're going to be feeling throughout the movie. It's a foreshadowing, but it's also a foundational terror that they are laying down from the opening minutes of the movie that you are never going to let go of until the end of the film. And so it's brilliant. And she's virginal. She's a kind of ethereal and a sprite and a free spirit. And having that be consumed by this unknown entity from below, I think is a fascinating thing. You could argue symbolism there and how many young people were destroyed by something that was overwhelming and they couldn't handle in the 1970s. Conversations you could have possibly if you wanted to go way out there with it. But I love it as an opening. It's such a great horror opening.
Well, and let's talk about how we got here, because if you look at Spielberg's initial storyboards for this, there's a shark in it.
Yes.
Like everything is about all the cool shots he was going to do with the shark. That was the plan. And so let's talk a little bit about this shark. They start off, they bring on John Alves as the designer, and they are looking at well, how big is this shark? So he creates 3 models. He creates a 16-foot shark, a 26-foot shark, and a 32-foot shark. And Spielberg comes and looks at them. He goes, okay, 16 foot is not intimidating enough. That's not scary enough. But what he said, which I found really interesting, he said that the 32-foot shark actually changes the genre of the movie.
Yes.
Because then it becomes a big giant monster.
Sharknado.
Exactly. And so 26 was the sweet spot. Yeah. And then they build the model out of clay. And again, remember, they thought they're going to have a year and a half to do this, and they end up having to try to do this in a few months. And they're doing multiple things at once. And it's kind of like, in a very small way, we just re-released our Apollo 13 episodes, but when they're in the Apollo program, they had little parts built all over the world, and they had to match up to the most minute degree in order to fit together. Well, we're not trying to send people to the moon here. This isn't as mission critical, but they are building all these different pieces in different places and hoping that they are all going to fit together on this.
Right.
And they're essentially building 3 different sharks. So they're building a shark that's the biggest one, which is on like a huge platform, I think 12 tons, that sits on the bottom of the ocean that has a crane, and the crane can move forward and back and up and down and tilt side to side. And on that is a shark. So that's like the shark coming out of the water. That's all of those kinds of moves. But then they also want swimming sharks, and they can't, because they can't fit everything just inside the shark. The shark has to be open on one side.
Right.
So you have one side of the shark that can't be seen by camera. So they build two of them. One that can swim left to right and one that can swim right to left. So they both have the opposite to places where the things are exposed. So this is the stuff that they're building. And to do all this, they bring in a guy who had been retired, but is the only guy who's really built underwater pneumatic things. And that is a guy named Bob Matty. And Bob Matty is the guy who created the squid from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Oh, yeah. Very memorable squid.
Yeah. But the thing is, here is how they messed up. So, okay. I mean, and the big mess up, to be really, really clear, it's not their fault that they cut their time to build the thing in like a quarter. But when they tested everything, they tested it in fresh water.
Oh.
And they didn't test it in salt water.
Right.
And salt water is corrosive.
Yep.
And this is the weird thing that I have to talk about, is that my first shark documentary was Fabien Cousteau, Mind of the Demon, and it was about building a mechanical shark that was a submarine that Fabien could be inside and swim with real sharks.
Right.
And so I spent about a year of my life with a bunch of dudes trying to build a mechanical shark that could swim in salt water. And the big thing that happened on that move, so I came in they were about halfway through the production, and they had been, National Geographic was producing it, and National Geographic decided to stop, and the movie hadn't been sold, and they had run out of money, and they desperately needed to make a sale, and they called me in to cut a promo.
Right.
And I look at this movie, and the idea was we're going to be like Jane Goodall and live with the sharks like you're a shark and learn about shark behavior. And I'm looking at it, and it's just failure after failure after failure after failure. Huh. And the change that I made to the movie was I said, this is not a movie about sharks. This is a movie about stupid people trying to build a thing that doesn't work.
That's the documentary.
That's what the documentary became when I started editing it.
Right.
And so so I just want to say, like, this idea of trying to get a shark to swim in salt water is incredibly hard. Yeah. Salt is corrosive. It wears away at the materials that make the skin. It messes with electronics. Things rust up, devices stop working. And that's what they're trying to deal with. And they cannot get the damn shark to work.
Yeah.
And because they can't get the shark to work, he comes up with how he shoots Chrissy going swimming, which is one of the great scenes of all time.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that's the greatest thing about a director is what can you do when things fall apart? What can you come up with? How can you troubleshoot a situation? And those are the happy accidents that happen on a set, or the situations that pop up on a set that can really elevate your film or destroy your film. You know, and with Spielberg, clearly with Jaws, it helped to elevate the film going this direction, because I can't even imagine these scenes with a shark. And I can't imagine that they would have the same kind of power and impact as they did by not having the shark.
So that's the end of Chrissy. We dissolve to bright, bright daylight, horizon shard of the water. And I love that our first glimpse of Brody is out of focus as his head comes into frame in front of the window with the vast expanse of the sea in front of him. I think it sets up perfectly his conflict and who he is and where he is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Immediately you sense that thing that he's not 100% happy where he's at. And it's interesting to do it like in bed with to establish that relationship right off the bat as well.
So obviously this is Roy Scheider, and this is where, so Zanuck and Brown wanted a name for the part of Brody, and Spielberg was kind of mixed on it, and he hadn't really found anyone that really worked, and he's at a party, and he's talking to some people, and he starts talking about, this shark movie he's doing. And he doesn't know that in the background, someone has started to listen in to what's this crazy talk I'm hearing about a shark movie? And Roy Scheider is at the party and slowly kind of moves over and gets Spielberg to tell him the whole story. And Spielberg goes, but I haven't found Chief Brody yet. And Roy Scheider's like, what about me? And it sounds like Spielberg like looked at him and then looked at him again and went, yeah, okay.
Well, I mean, Roy is to me, sometimes I think he's kind of a forgotten actor.
Yeah.
Because people just think about Jaws. And he was in so many great movies. We've covered, of course, French Connection here on the show. He was also in Clute, which was Jane Fonda's Oscar-winning film for her as a Best Actress. He was also in The 7-Ups, which is one of the quietly great films from the 1970s that no one talks about that I think is just as good as The French Connection. He was in Marathon Man as Dustin Hoffman's brother. He was in the William Friedkin film Sorcerer, which is currently out now as a Criterion 4K collection. And then All That Jazz in 1979. It starts to be, a bit of mixed after the 70s so in terms of what he appears in and if they're good or not. But he's always solid whenever he appears in anything. But the 70s was really his sweet spot. And just think about that, going from where he starts out in The French Connection in 1971 to leading All That Jazz as essentially the Bob Fosse of the film. It's an amazing journey. And yet people don't think of Roy Scheider as one of the great actors of the 1970s like they do about Hackman and other actors.
Right.
And I would absolutely put him in that category, and Hoffman, Pacino, all those guys. De Niro from the 70s. Scheider was incredible in what he was able to do and in multiple different types of movies, so
You know what part of it is? He's not showy.
No, he's not. He's just he's a blue collar actor. Yes, 100%.
He's going to hit the exact right spot. I remember we talked about All That Jazz in the first few months of the Cine-Files.
Yeah.
And we haven't talked about it since. It's a really weird movie, but one I love.
Yeah.
Although the ending is a little bit bizarre, but I still really like the movie.
Yeah.
And so Roy Scheider's cast, and we see him move through the house, and then we see a very sleepy Lorraine Gray as his wife Ellen.
Lorraine Gray, who not a lot of acting work after the movie. Her last film was 1941. Like she was done after this. Yeah, she did a lot of TV work. She was in film. She was in shows like Dragnet, Ironside, McCloud, all through the 70s here. Macmillan and Wife, Night Gallery, for those of you old enough to remember. Kojak, she was a recurring character in Kojak. Marcus Welby, MD. And then she moved into films. Jaws was her her theatrical debut as an actress. Then she was in Car Wash. She came back for Jaws 2, obviously. Then 1941 was like the last thing she did until she came back for Jaws: The Revenge in 1987, which was her final film role. But here's the thing. She married she married entertainment industry executive Sidney Sheinberg in 1956 when she was 19. And Sheinberg is credited for discovering Spielberg. So you have to ask, was there negotiations? How did she get on the film? Did it work? Either way, I don't care how she got on the film. I think she is fantastic as Chief Brody's wife. She's so great as Elaine Brody. And she brings the right amount of just kind of lived in this relationship for a while type of energy. And you can tell she has a genuine affection for Chief Brody. And in their interactions here, right in the opening, they're back and forth. It's the kind of back and forth you have in a lived-in relationship, the little jokes you make at each other's expenses and what have you. And I think she's such an incredible energy in the film, and I love it.
I totally agree with you. I go, she is so natural and perfect that even if he was trying to please Sid Sheinberg to bring her on, it made the right choice. And this is the thing I was thinking about. One of the things people don't quite understand about Spielberg is how much steel that guy has in him.
Oh, yeah.
And so here's the story. And I'm 85% sure that this is Sid Sheinberg who was the person involved in this story.
Yeah.
When we did Back to the Future, I don't know if you remember, at one point they get a note, I believe from Sid Sheinberg, who sees that it's like Zombie Women from Outer Space is like the comic that like George McFly is reading or something like that.
Yeah.
And they get a note from Sid Sheinberg, goes to Zemeckis, and it says, I think that's the title for your movie. You need to change the movie to Zombie Women from Outer Space or whatever the thing is.
Right.
And Zemeckis goes to Spielberg, who's the producer, and says, what do we do? This is the head of the studio. He's the most incredibly powerful person. What do we tell him? And Spielberg goes, I got this. And he writes a note that says, Dear Sid, thank you so much for your suggestion on the title. That is hilarious. All of us had a big laugh over here. Thanks a lot, Steven. And Sid Sheinberg never brought it up again. Isn't that the best?
That's amazing.
As you said, like this is the guy that moved into the Universal backlot when he had no permission and opened his own office. I mean, the guy, so I don't think he would take on Lorraine Gray unless she was good. And she's great.
And she is. And just to be clear, this is not some kind of, like Hollywood hire. Someone who just walked off the streets and became an actress. She won at 16 years old a Best Actress award in a competition at the Pasadena Playhouse. She was offered a scholarship to enroll at the Pasadena Playhouse, but she turned it down to study political science at Columbia University. That's what she did. And then she came back to acting and established herself. And it may have been that she wanted to kind of walk her own path, even though Sidney Sheinberg was coming up as a big name and working through the ranks of Hollywood. So I imagine she's a very self-possessed woman. She became a strong feminist, was on the board for Ms. Magazine, and ran New Hope Productions, which did a lot of entertainment for children. So she's very determined and still alive, by the way. Lorraine Gray still with us. So, someone who's a very strong energy in the world.
How come the sun didn't used to shine on you?
We bought the house on the floor. This is summer.
So the sun rises outside my bedroom. And so and I've thought about doing it for years, and I really should, which is to actually create like little lines that would show exactly where the sun is on each day of the year as it goes across my room, because it really does. It's like, oh, it's hit where it's right in my eyes now,
Right. This exchange reminds me of when we first moved to where we moved to in San Diego, because we moved during COVID in 2020, and there was nobody in the streets, right? And then as things opened up, there are times where I comment to her going like, man, there's more traffic than I anticipated around where we live. And she's like, well, we did move here when it was COVID.
Yeah.
So, you have those, again, these back and forths, which I think is great.
One of the undiscussed things that Spielberg, I think, introduced to film is he had a way of showing natural American, suburban, human family life.
Yes.
That I don't think had ever been seen. And you see it in Jaws, you see it in Close Encounters, obviously see it later in E.T. Like, it just feels, everything about this world feels real,
Well, it's funny because, right, we'd seen the kind of, the suburban lives that were portrayed in the 1950s and 60s that were kind of skewered in the 70s to show what was really going on in these neighborhoods. But here is Spielberg showing you that there were still these kind of wholesome interactions, these wholesome families. So there was a balance of both here. And I think you're right. It's more of the modern interpretation to what goes on in these relationships in the 1970s. Yeah.
See the kids?
They must be in the backyard.
In Amity, you say yard.
They're in the yard, not too far from the car. How's that?
Like you're from New York.
Spielberg is just in almost zero lines, like in a few seconds.
Yep.
Here's the whole backstory of this couple. They just bought the house. They just moved to Amity. They're both from New York. Like, there's so much that we learn right in this moment.
Yeah. This is also why casting is important. I always talk about you need to flesh out characters. It doesn't mean you need to give the characters 20 minutes each to really establish themselves. You've got to do a good job of giving the background to these characters by casting, by dialogue, and by performance and direction. All of that needs to combine, because if you're going to move quickly through a movie, you've got to really find little moments to stop the film for a second, have you dial into a relationship so that you're invested in these characters as the movie goes forward. And you're right, Steve, this is just a few seconds of back and forth, but you already established their relationship, the playfulness that they have between each other, the love they have for each other, but also the fact that he's an out-of-towner and that he is not 100% happy with where they're at by getting up and bitching about where the sun is hitting him in the room, right? So you're adding all of that as an undercurrent throughout this scene to establish their relationship.
Well, and you think of how a more ham-fisted filmmaker would do it, which is you'd have someone walk up and say, oh, when did are you from Amity? And they'd say, no, actually, I was a New York cop and I did this and I got tired of the rat race. And so we decided to move here a couple of years ago. And you would have someone tell you all the information you wanted to know.
Yeah.
So in the book, and I'll continue to point some of these things out, Brody is not from New York. He is an islander who always wanted to be the chief of police. He knows everybody there. He's part of the community. And Ellen is one of the rich folks that came to the island during the summer.
Oh.
So there's a class distinction between Brody and Ellen is not happy about basically her lifestyle and excitement being on a low ebb now that she's, married to the chief of police and living on Amity full time.
Right. She's unsatisfied.
Spielberg said something, I think in the Jaws at 50 doc, or one of the docs, that it never occurred to me, which is he said, this is the theme of the movie. And I went, what? That's the theme of the movie? And what he said, and so I wanted to point it out here, and we'll come back to it because I think it's really interesting. He said the theme of the movie is home and going home to your safe home.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And so right now we start with, is our home New York?
Right.
Or is our home Amity? You know?
Yeah.
Like
that Neil Diamond song, I Said, where he's LA's, what does he say? Like, LA's fine, but it ain't home. New York's home, but it ain't home no more. That kind of thing where you're in between two places.
apropos of nothing except what you just said, there is no one like Neil Diamond.
No
Neil
one.
Diamond is Neil Diamond's Neil Diamond. You
He's
know,
the Jewish Elvis, damn it.
God bless him. And in comes one of their two sons. This is Michael, played by Chris Rebello, with a bloody hand.
Yeah, and he says a vampire bit him. So, what do you think that's about? Is it kind of establishing the monster aspect of this whole thing? What do you think?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it, but sure.
Yeah. This is the only thing he ever did, by the way. This kid, I think he's an Islander because he's from Massachusetts as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And as they're dealing with talking about the swings and stuff like that, the phone rings. Again, it's all these tiny details. He answers one phone, realizes it's the wrong phone, and picks up what is obviously the work phone because he's from the police.
And it's still new, right?
Yeah.
Because he still doesn't know which phone is which.
Yep.
So he's still new at the job.
We hear something about keep it there and I'll be there in 20 minutes. And he hangs up, and now we go outside, and you can totally see why they picked Martha's Vineyard for the architecture here, like the whitewash, broken fence. There's the dog. We're right on the water. It's a very, very specific world.
Agreed. And the back and forths they have as she's taking the scarf off his neck and her sitting down to do the swing with their other son, all of that, establishing the family, establishing, as you just alluded to, Steve, the home, right? That he doesn't feel 100% at home in.
Listen, Chief, be careful, will you?
In this town?
By the way, I don't know what's called, just the roofless truck, like the convertible truck that he drives is great choice. Yeah. And he's driving along these empty streets, very vacant. It's like when you move to San Diego during COVID. There are not a lot of people around. Yeah. Past the giant billboard for the annual regatta coming up, where we see this girl in a bikini on a raft, and there's a smiley face sun, and everything is very pristine.
Nice plant.
Yeah, that billboard. So Martha's Vineyard, rightly, was very mixed on this movie crew being there, and particularly for being there as long as they were there. I think there were some people on Martha's Vineyard who were totally into it and excited, and there were some people that really didn't like it.
What are they leaving?
Yeah, exactly. And one of the big things was they didn't want them to mess with the architecture, with the area. Yeah. And so they said, basically, the only thing they built that stood up for a long time is they built Quint's shack. Other than that, anything they build, they had to essentially take down that day. Right. So this billboard was up for one day. So both this scene and the later scene where there's the shark fin on it, where they're arguing in front of the billboard, were shot on the same day. And then they had to take down that billboard that night.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And now we cut to him walking with Cassidy, the drunk kid from last night, along this bluff.
And nobody saw her go into the water?
Somebody could have. I was sort of passed out.
You mean she ran out on you?
No, sir. She must have drowned.
I think just from that performance of the "No, sir, she must have drowned," we get all we need to know about this guy.
Yes. Clearly.
Not that he's a bad guy.
No.
You know what I mean?
He's just another dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something I never noticed until this last time in prepping for this show. Brody is carrying her clothes.
Yes.
I never picked up on that.
Yeah.
And that's what's amazing about this movie. I swear to God, every time you watch it, if you keep looking, you'll go like, oh, I didn't see that before.
Little touches of genius, right? And they don't highlight it, that there's no neon sign. But if you catch it, it adds even more respect and appreciation for the amount of time they spent to get this thing right.
You're an Islander?
No, New York City. You here for the summer?
The shot construction is so gorgeous because we're in this shot. It's like, so when I do an over the shoulder, like you and I are talking to each other, there's a shot over my shoulder looking at you and a shot over your shoulder looking at me. And they're even. This is like a quarter of a mile over the shoulder. Yeah. Because we have them in the foreground with the deputy way, way, way in the background. And then we're going to reverse that shot past the deputy's legs back towards them. And here's the thing. And this is, I promise I will not point out every one of these because there are hundreds of them in this movie. But there's this kind of shot that Steven Spielberg does, which is, it's like a transformation, which is that within the shot starts off in one place and then something moves or the camera moves or a person moves or the position changes and it becomes a different shot. So rather than cutting from a close shot to an over the shoulder to a 2-shot. Spielberg is moving through those shots, but it's all one shot.
Yes.
So in this case, we're looking past the deputy's legs towards Brody and the kid in the distance, and then the deputy drops down into frame. So rather than cut, he's now come into his close-up, and we can see he's hugely emotional and freaked out. And this, by the way, is Jeffrey Kramer, who plays Deputy Hendricks.
Yeah, Jeffrey Kramer, actor who's done a lot of things before he got into Jaws, Chico and the Man, and Barney Miller, and then was consistently in Jaws, Jaws 2, did a bunch of TV shows, but then popped up in some movies in the 1980s like Halloween 2, Santa Claus, Clue. He's the motorist in Clue. And his last credit as an actor is in Ally McBeal. But here's another actor with a little bit of a smaller role in the film who goes on to be a big producer in Hollywood. He started out in 92 producing Dylan's 30th anniversary celebration, then was a producer for a couple episodes in Chicago Hope, but then he was a producer and co-executive producer of The Practice for 62 episodes, then was the co-EP for Ally McBeal for 51 episodes, and recently did, has a project coming up, but hasn't done much of anything else after the Ally McBeal stuff. So really big in the 90s as a producer, and then hasn't done too much since that time. And he has another project coming up called H-Town, which I don't know much about, but yeah, so an interesting guy, another actor in this thing who goes on to be a pretty big producer in Hollywood.
So they run up. I love just the little details like Brody not letting the kid come forward, you know? The fact that the whatever the deputy has seen, we haven't seen yet because it's obscured by this little hill. And again, this is building up your anticipation. We know something big is happening. Brody walks forward as the deputy looks down, and then we get this really nasty close-up of this hand coming out of the sand, surrounded by crabs crawling all over it and all this seaweed. So initially, naturally, the prop department looks at the script. They're like, okay, we need a severed hand, and it's going to be like this. And so they build a severed hand.
Yeah.
And Spielberg looks at it, and it's kind of like gray-black. And Spielberg looks at it, it's like, this doesn't look right. And they're like, no, if a skin sits out in the sun for this amount of time, it turns this color that's accurate. And Spielberg's like, yeah, it looks like plastic. I don't like it.
Yeah.
And so what can you get that really will look like a good severed hand? Answer, a hand. So what they did was they buried a female crew member in the sand.
Shut up.
And that is her hand sticking out of it, which they covered in moving crabs, John.
Oh my God. Oh my God. That is crazy. You can see her hand moving around or twitching at times. I bet it's twitching from the fear of the crabs crawling across it. But yeah, I mean, this is such a great way to introduce the horror of what's going to happen, right? What do you do in a typical horror film, standard like slasher film? You just see the body and the knives through with a big like O face on it, right? To have these pieces sticking out of the sand, it is just unsettling, man. It's such a smart way to get you to understand the ferocity of this thing, and that this is all that's left of her.
Exactly,
is even more unsettling, right?
I think it's the big thing to me, and this is honestly a world-changing thought in all sorts of things for me, is that the scary shark is the one that lives in our minds.
Oh yeah,
and so the not seeing the shark when she got killed, and then part of it is that we're only seeing the hand. The scary part is all the bodies that's inside the shark. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's picturing what you're not seeing. That is what's scaring you. And I think this applies in so much of our lives, so much of what we live and fear and think about. It's what lives in our minds. It's not necessarily, sometimes it's reality. Sometimes it's just what's in your mind.
Right. That's what so many great breakdowns of this film have talked about, is the symbolism of what the shark symbolizes in our lives, and how we react to it, and what happens in our communities, what happens in our worlds when things like this come for us and we feel like we can't beat it, and what the reactions is to all of it, and how we make it way bigger in our minds, as you just alluded to, Steve, than it might actually be.
So less than a minute ago, maybe, Brody said, his wife said, be careful. And he said, in this town? And now it's like a minute later. And Roy Scheider taking off his glasses and realizing the seriousness of this moment is just really powerful.
Yeah. I mean, combine that with the Hendricks falling down in the foreground, which I think is a great reaction, by the way, being unable to even blow the whistle again. And you juxtapose it with Brody on the left of the screen, because Hendricks is on the right when he falls. Brody's on the left looking at this thing. And immediately you can tell from that shot that this is a guy we want to care about. This is a guy we want to follow. And this is a guy we trust to handle the situation because he understands the enormity of what's happened here, right? He gets it. He feels sympathetic. It's not just another body as a cop. He's legitimately caring about what happened here.
We're at the police station and we have Cassidy, the kid, and the deputy are both sitting there. And this, again, it's the thing I'd never noticed before. They both have glasses. And I was like, suddenly went like, what are they drinking? And I think it might be Alka-Seltzer.
Probably.
And this is another one of those shots because it's going to become different things. So Polly, the secretary, enters.
Well, you're up awful early. Is the chief in there?
And she walks past these two guys and the camera tracks with her. And this is what we call a motivated camera move. And Spielberg is the master, is that the camera just doesn't move on its own. The person walking is moving the camera, and that moves to the doorway where you have this doorway frame shot of Brody at the typewriter. And then she walks into the room and the camera reframes again, but it's all one shot and it transforms to these other shots.
Yeah.
So I told you that I really didn't understand how beautiful this movie was until I got on Laserdisc. Well, this scene was my demonstration because there was this horrible thing called pan and scan, which is taking a widescreen image and you would either move the camera around to the left or the right, or you would just cut. So like if I had a two shot with you on one side and Shannon McClung far on the other, well, I can't show both of your heads in a 4:3 image. So I would just, instead of having a master that where you're just talking, I would cut between you and Shannon. That's what we had on, and it would ruin the scene. And this one is a perfect example. Instead of having a camera where it's moving to all these different positions, it cut 5 times.
Yeah.
You know,
throws off the rhythm of the scene. Really,
totally changes the scene. In particular, because she's talking about police stuff, I do love the line that she says,
Now, we got a bunch of calls about that karate school. It seems that the 9-year-olds from the school have been karateing the picket fences.
which A, is hilarious.
Yeah.
B, they filmed it. They actually got a bunch of 9-year-olds and had them chopping up.
We're about to see the after effects of that. But
exactly.
Great. Yeah. But I love this too, because look, we are dealing with the death, right? And we're dealing with the ramifications as the audience. We know something these people do not know other than Roy Scheider and Hendricks and the kid. These two people who are the secretary walks in and she sees them both sitting there and she just kind of walks by them because this is just like, she is a grizzled veteran of this type of stuff. So she just handles it. And she takes his advice about stuff, but then she tells him all the stuff he needs to know. And then the old guy walks in and is like, hey, well, this car is parked in front of, so you're getting you're getting the idea of this guy as a small town chief of police, and that people can just walk up and express their issues of what's going on. Meanwhile, he's trying to get to something and get questions answered about this. So life is going on, but he is focused on getting to this situation, figure things out, because he's also got to type what the medical examiner tells him over the phone,
Well, and that typing is if you watch the pan and scan version, we've cut 5 times before we get to the cut to the insert of the typewriter where he types, because he's talking to the medical examiner, as you say, and he types shark attack.
Yeah.
In the real version, there's been no cuts. So we've just been in one moving wide shot the whole time. So when you cut to that extreme close-up of shark attack, it has a lot of impact that's lost the other way. And just to what you were saying before, like how many times have you been dealing with some heavy shit that nobody knew about, and everybody's coming up to you with their stupid shit, and you have to talk to them and not let on what you're dealing with. Right. That's where Brody is right now at this moment.
100%.
And then he says, after he finds out now, so he knows it was a shark attack. That's what the medical examiner said. He's making the next obvious logical choice.
Hey, Chief. Where do we keep the beach closed signs?
Chief.
We never had it. No?
Which is a nice hint. It's like, they've never closed the beaches before.
No.
Okay. Well, what is that? So what does that mean if he's about to close the beaches? Yeah.
So he heads out on the street, and this is one of those. So you know how I said that they really are very sparing in music in this film. Yeah. That unless we're specifically dealing with the shark. Well, there's a real sense that he is marching.
Yes.
In this
100%.
scene. And it's because in the distance we hear marching music. Yep. But it is not score in the sense that it is John Williams music, really, but it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be source, because every once in a while you see like a Boy Scout marching band who clearly isn't playing anything like the music that we're hearing, but you have that feeling of the marching without using score and because it's a little bit off, because
Yeah.
it's a kids band, you get that small town feel, I think, in,
Oh,
in his
100%.
march for the mission.
Just seeing the way that this is all designed, it gives you that small town feel. And you're right, the march, it's almost like geez, I remember that black and white film with Lee Remick. I can't remember where she she debuted as like this cheerleader or marching band. I can't remember the film. Oh yeah, it's Facing the Crowd, right? Isn't that her in the Facing the Crowd when we see her for the first time and she's cheering
Oh,
around with the
maybe.
band? So it's got that energy to it.
No, it's Patricia Neal is facing the crowd.
Yeah, but she's not the like Lee Remick is.
Oh, I know who you mean. Yeah,
the young girl that he kind of has a thing for, which is really
the baton twirler.
Yes, exactly. That was her film debut.
Oh.
And so you hear the marching band, and the marching band is establishing a certain energy in that scene, the same way it's establishing an energy in this scene, as we see him marching through the towns. And the way it's shot, too, with him like quickly moving out of frame as people are coming out of doors. We're seeing the Gazette. We're seeing a business, the medical examiner or somebody else walking out of a business. So you're getting a sample of the businesses. You're getting a sample of the look of this, but you're also getting a real indication of the determination he has to get the signs and get these answers.
And I think this town looks 100% real.
Yeah,
yes. It looks like you're watching a documentary on some level of just like, these doesn't look like Hollywood people. This doesn't look like stage things. I don't know how they handled the background actors and who, but it just looks kind of normal small town life,
Yes. I love the old guy confronting him about the karate chopping of his fence posts and the tire. And I even love that Brody walks to the edge of the corner and then walks across the walkway. Rather than cutting across the street, he follows the rules. And so it's these little things that give you character beats about a person. The fact that he walks to the walkway, then takes the left as he's supposed to do, walking along the lanes there, it's fascinating because he's chief of police. He could totally walk across diagonally the road, but he doesn't do that. So I like that.
See, this is what I'm saying. I never noticed that one. That's a great one. I had not seen. Like, there's so much in this movie.
Yeah.
And we go into like the general store, and there's a lot of this in the movie, which is incidental dialogue.
Yes, I love it.
This stuff isn't going to help me in August. The summer kings come down here in June.
It's not important, but it's there's some guys arguing about the supplies that he got, and they're the wrong things. And of course, all of these are locals. These are just real people.
They decorate the film with authenticity, these incidental dialogue stuff that you hear. I love it.
And Brody is grabbing paints and brushes and all sorts of stuff, and he knocks over the brushes while he's doing it.
Was that improv?
I have no idea if it was improv.
Okay.
But my guess is it isn't, because I think this is like the perfect thing Spielberg is doing throughout the whole movie. He could just grab the brushes.
Right.
But grabbing the brushes and having them knock over is just a little bit more interesting. It makes it more human. It makes it more real. It's interesting,
It adds to the tension, right? Because he's trying to get to something and he's knocking things over to get to it. Yeah.
He's outside. That convertible truck pulls up with the deputy.
Chief, Polly sent me to find you to tell you that there's a bunch of Boy Scouts out in April Bay doing their mile swim for their merit badges. I couldn't call them in. There's no phones out there.
And I think Brody is a great leader. He's decisive. He makes the right decision. He says, and he tells me to get out.
Take this stuff back to the office and get to work on those signs. Beach is closed. No swimming. By order of the Amity PD.
And I love this piece.
And let Polly do the printing.
What's the matter with my printing?
Let Polly do the printing.
And again, it's little things,
Yes, 100%. They decorate the relationships, these little mini exchanges. Yes.
He drives away just as Mayor Vaughn, Murray Hamilton, comes out. And I love that he's wearing a blue blazer with little anchors on it.
Yes. And he comes out into frame again to the right. He comes out in frame in the foreground, predominant there. So you understand this is an important character in the movie right off the bat from an introduction. And he tries to yell for the chief as Brody drives away. And this is Murray Hamilton, who is a fantastic actor and well known for this big role, but he was in a lot of other things before this film. And so some people don't remember some of the stuff that he was in because you've seen him in these little, he was in The Hustler, Steve. Remember, he is a part of the Paul Newman film, The Hustler, as well. And he did a number of, he was in The Way We Were with Robert Redford, which is a very beloved film from people in the 1970s, The Boston Strangler, the Tony Curtis film. Remember, he is Mr. Robinson in The Graduate, who confronts Dustin Hoffman as well in the movie. And, he was a guy who worked a lot and wanted to do a number of different types of things. And so you saw him in things like Brubaker. He was also in a very memorable episode of Mama's Family. If you guys ever watched that show in the 80s, which I loved, And sadly, he was preparing to come back to reprise his role in Jaws: The Revenge, but he died of lung cancer at 63 years old. So a very memorable performance, and certainly a damn good actor who was in a lot of things. If you go back through his resume and see the quality of shows and films that he was a part of.
So we're out at where the Boy Scout mile swim is. I remember doing my Boy Scout mile swim every year when at camp for like 5 or 6 years, had to do that. Brody wants to get a ride over on the ferry. He's obviously nervous and on edge. And there the mayor drives up with a bunch of guys, including Carl Gottlieb, our writer, who's playing Ben Meadows. And this is, I think this is an amazing, like, this shot is visually interesting beginning to end, not just because of where Spielberg is staging things and where he's putting the camera and how he's moving the camera, but we're on a fucking boat that's going to spin around and do all of these moves. It's an incredibly interesting shot.
Yeah. And I love this scene. I mean, this is the mayor and the fathers of the town coming to confront the outsider who is doing what he thinks is right in the situation. And they essentially want to control him. And the exchanges here, I know you're going to go through the scene, but the exchanges here are just a window into political back and forth that happen even to this day, man.
Martin, you going to shut down the beaches on your own authority?
Well, what other authority do I need?
Technically, you need a civic ordinance or a resolution by a board of selectmen.
That's just going by the book.
Well, so Murray Hamilton's so good in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, right off the bat, he is undercutting Chief Brody's power right off the bat. Like, he grabs him by the arm and turns him around, and he almost is scoffing at him. Oh, you shutting down the beaches? On whose authority? Like, he's questioning him right off the bat to try to diminish him and belittle him so that he understands who's really in power here, you know.
Well, but he's also, I think that's true, but I also think he's sliding in. You know what I mean? Like, there is a
he's doing it subtly, but you can tell what he means. Right, exactly.
He doesn't want to come right out and say you can't do that. He wants to appear to be reasonable.
Yes, he's a politician.
We're really a little anxious that you're rushing into something serious here. It's your first summer, you know.
What does that mean?
See there, and they're questioning his experience level, right? By saying that,
Well, and honestly, like, he's not a water guy, he's not a shark guy, he's not an ocean guy, he's not an Amity guy. Like, he doesn't. And I'm going to say,
yes,
these business concerns.
Are you going to side with the mayor here right now? Is that what you're saying?
No. So here, I was going to hold off on saying this till later, but I'll say it now, which is no. Of course, I'm not siding with the mayor. It's the movie is called Jaws. There is a killer shark in the water. Brody is right. We all know he's right. That's why we went to the movie.
Right.
But we are faced in our society with constant expressions of catastrophic threats to us in one way or another. And they come from both sides of politics. So we can hear from one side that there is a army coming over the border and we have to shut the border down. We could hear that we have to stop burning fossil fuels because of climate change. We can hear that we have to shut down the economy because of COVID and we all have to wear masks and get vaccines. We can hear that crime is a problem. We can hear that chemicals in our food is a problem. We can hear that pollution is a problem. We can hear all these things. And I'm sure that people listening to this, based on their political position, some of the things I said sounded like really damn serious problems.
Right.
And some of the things they said sounded like someone trying to scare you. And the thing is, we all have to navigate this without actually knowing the information. They don't know at this moment in the movie whether the shark is going to come back or what the shark is or anything like that. So I'm not siding with the mayor, obviously, because there's a killer shark. Right. But I am navigating what someone tells you is a threat to your existence is actually hard to do. And we struggle with it all the time on different threats.
All right. I love you for being this hopeful. I'm going to be the cynic here. And I think the fact that the medical examiner is with him, I think he's intimidated the medical examiner
100%
to change.
Oh, totally.
So yes, you're right in the sense that, well, how much do they really know here? But I think the mayor is cynically doing what he thinks is best financially for the town at the expense of a young woman's life. And he's about to explain further in the scene how a young girl goes swimming. And where have we seen this before, where we are ignoring things that happen to young women in order to keep certain things afloat? And so I think this is a little interesting to see this as a political microcosm of what goes on, as you said, when these issues pop up and people try to belittle the issues or diminish the issues because they have a vested interest in certain things.
100%.
Yeah.
No, well, then let's get to those moments.
I'm only trying to say that Amity is a summer town. We need summer dollars. And if the people can't swim here, they'll be glad to swim at the beaches of Cape Cod, the Hamptons, Long Island. That doesn't mean we have to serve them up a smorgasbord.
I love that line because you put that line with Richard Dreyfuss' line later. I'm not going to stand here talking about lining up to be lunch.
We never had that kind of trouble in these waters. Well, what else could have done that to that girl?
And this is the moment you talked about. They talk up the clearly politically intimidated, pressured medical examiner.
Well, I think possibly, yes, a boating
That's not what you told me over the phone.
I was wrong. We'll have to amend our reports.
There's no, this is fucking corruption. I'm not denying that at all. That is exactly what happened. All I'm saying is that there are many times where people have manipulated information in order to make their side sound more plausible. And that is also, and so yes, this is real. This is what happens, The mayor says you need a civic ordinance to close down the beaches. Right. The evidence for closing down the beaches, which is shark attack on the death certificate, has now been pulled back.
Yeah.
Brody's doesn't have a lot to do here,
But yes. But I think this is what's great about the movie is that he's unsettled. He's inexperienced in terms of being the chief of police in a situation like this in this town. He is not aware of the financial implications of what would happen if he shuts down the beach because he's not familiar. He's not from the town. And he's still new at the job. So this is what I think Brody at the end of the movie would have absolutely told Marty to shove it up his ass, right? But here at the beginning, he's still kind of finding his feet in this town. And so you walk that line between what you think is right and not stepping on toes. And so I like this as a balance for him, which is why later when we get to that scene after Miss Kintner slaps him and Murray Hamilton tries to tell him, oh no, she's wrong. He's like, no, she's not. And he walks off because he knows he should have been more decisive. You just said, Steve, he's so decisive in these moments with the political pressure. He's not as decisive because he's not as experienced at dealing with this kind of political pressure at this point in his career as the chief of police in Amity.
That no, she's not is one of the great moments in the film.
100%.
I mean, incredible. The mayor is, I will say, trying to frame this in a way for Martin to help him to accept it.
A summer girl goes swimming, swims out a little far. She tires. Fishing boat comes along.
It's happened before.
And then this next little speech, I couldn't imagine anyone other than Murray Hamilton doing this.
Yeah.
It's all psychological. You yell barracuda. Everybody says, huh? What? You yell shark. We've got a panic on our hands on the 4th of July.
And again, the framing here is so great. Like they're in the foreground. We see Gottlieb. And usually sometimes these scenes, Steve, you know this as a director, in the background, you kind of fuzz them out a little bit or blur them out a little bit. So you're focused on the people in front. The fact that you can still make our Carl Gottlieb and the medical examiner reacting to this back and forth to add to this back and forth that's happening and the weight of it, I think is so great. And Murray Hamilton, who was really great friends with George C. Scott, you can tell these guys come from maybe the same type of delivery, the same type of energy. Because you say nobody else, I think George C. Scott would have been interesting in this role like this, but Murray Hamilton is perfect for in this movie with these actors to deliver this stuff. You're so right.
I think George C. Scott would overpower the role.
I think you're 100% right.
I think because Murray Hamilton has that slightly smarmy, small towny kind of quality that's important. So in the book, there's a constant feeling of like, why is the mayor so intent on on keeping the beaches open? This doesn't make sense. What's going on? Because he's deeply in debt to the mob in the book.
Oh my God.
And the mob is threatening his life. And at one point, the mob kills Chief Brody's kid's cat and hangs it up with a warning to tell him to keep the beaches open.
What? I don't remember that. I read the book. It must have been forever since I read the book. I mean, I might have to read this again, man. Yeah.
Here's what I'll say about the book. Is that, and it was a huge bestseller. You know, people love the book. I think the book is perfectly fine. And specifically in this way, if you're walking through the airport and you realized you didn't have a book to read on the plane, and you looked at the stack at the newsstand and you saw Jaws and you read it on the plane, you would be perfectly happy with how you spent your flight. It is the farthest thing from a great book. You know, it's fine. It's fine. And I'll say the other thing. All the greatness of the movie Jaws, not all of it, 95% of it is Spielberg and not in the book. You know, it's all the details we've been talking about.
Yeah.
That's what makes it great.
Agreed.
And I love that the mayor knows that he has won, that he has made his case, that he has stopped Brody, and he just turns to the ferry guy and says,
Okay, you can take us back now.
so the beaches are open. Yeah. We see, locals and this dog run in, and we're playing fetch with the dog. And we see a mother and her son. This is Alex Kittner, played by Jeffrey Voorhees, and the mom is played by Lee Fierro.
So a funny little thing that I discovered in doing like kind of a little bit, because Jeffrey Voorhees didn't do much after this at all. He ended up opening a restaurant. And one of the things he served at his restaurant was the Alex Kittner sandwich, which is hilarious, right? Well, Lee Fierro tells this story that she stopped off at a restaurant and saw that they had the Alex Kittner sandwich and had no idea that the person who ran the restaurant was Jeffrey Voorhees. And when he found out that she was in the restaurant, he ran out. They hadn't seen each other in like years since the movie. And they had this incredible reunion over the Alex Kittner sandwich. So it's just kind of fascinating.
John, what's in the sandwich?
I couldn't find that. I really researched that to find out what was in the sandwich.
Oh my God.
I don't know what is in the sandwich.
Anyone listening there who could tell us what the Alex Kittner sandwich is. Yeah. I mean, does it have like a little raft plastic and some blood? I mean, like what the hell's on it?
I think of Billy Crystal and Princess Bride. The mutton is nice and lean.
It's nice and the shark is nice and lean. So, and then Lee Fierro, she also a local and good at improv. And so this scene is improv. Spielberg just said he wants to go in the water. You want to prevent him going in the water. Right. And they start doing the improv, and the improv is going. And the improv is still going, and it's still going. And Spielberg says, cut, and walks up to Lee Fierro and says, listen, eventually he has to get in the water or we don't have a movie. So they shortened up the improv, and that is Lee Fierro.
Yeah, she's really good. And look, she didn't end up doing much else. She did come back to reprise Miss Kittner in Jaws: The Revenge. We almost have to do a watch along of that, Steve. Almost.
I haven't seen, I think I've seen 2 and 3, but not since the 80s.
Right. Before, have you seen? Well, no, 3 is. Oh, yeah, 4 is Jaws: The Revenge. So have you?
I think I've seen all of them, but I have no memory of them.
Yeah, 4 is the one with Michael Caine and Mario Van Peebles.
Yeah, I've seen that,
which is not that great for God's sakes. But yeah, she during the filming of Jaws, she operated a children's theater there, the Theater's Workshop in Martha's Vineyard. She attended the Martin Luther King I Have a Dream speech. She was a member of the NAACP for many years. And she, of course, is best remembered for that role. But she was artistic director for 25 years, as I said, for the Island Theater Workshop there on Martha's Vineyard. So when you say that she's a local, she absolutely is a local. And one interesting thing, too, is that apparently throughout her life, young men who've loved Jaws have come up to her and asked her to slap them. And she has done it. And she has done it because, of course, we're going to get to when she slaps Chief Brody. But she said, this is her quote, "How many times have I been asked to slap somebody?" This is in 2012. "I never counted. It happens a lot, and it's mostly young men. I do it to please the fans. But last year, I decided that is it. I have slapped my last slap." That was in 2012.
I mean, what's so crazy? I mean, like people, there are obviously things from movies that people do because of movies. They stand in front of the George Seurat painting at the Chicago Museum in honor of Ferris Bueller. There's all sorts of like random things where people do those things. To come up to a strange woman and say, "Can you please slap me?" That's a real commit. Honestly, that is a sign of how amazing a film this is. Because that is so weird.
Agreed.
And now we just had a discussion between the little boy and mom about, I want to go back in the water. She finally gives permission. So naturally, he should be getting up and go to the water.
Right.
But he doesn't, because if he walked towards the water, he could not motivate Spielberg's camera move.
Yes.
Because he wants to track him over to Ellen.
I just want to know one simple thing. When do I get to become an islander?
Ellen, never. Never. You're not born here. You're not an islander. Maybe. That's it.
And this is one of my favorite locals. She's not an actor. I doubt she's done anything, but she is so good as this particular character in this town.
She has the perfect tone of voice. And even this interaction, because you can hear off camera that her husband is like, I'm going to go talk to him. And she's like, okay, but only talk to him for a couple of minutes. Don't distract him. He's trying to relax. And he walks over and we see this interaction. And she's the one after like a minute who's like, will you come on back? Can I talk? Will you come back here? And so, yeah, she is a great person to focus on in this movie. Such a local energy, as you were saying, Steve, that works so well.
And the camera tracks past them over to Brody, watching the beach. And we see the guy continue to play fetch with his dog. And Alex is out swimming on his raft. There's women floating on floaty things. And there's no music.
Yeah.
Because there's no shark yet. And here's the thing about this. Most people, when they go, I want to make a scary movie, they go, I need to make things look scary.
Yeah.
And what Spielberg does, he goes, I need to make things look perfectly normal.
Yeah.
This is just a normal day at the beach. There's absolutely nothing to be scared of in this scene. And that is why it's scary.
Yeah.
Because we know the shark's there,
100%.
And then we have one of the most spotted filmmaking techniques in Jaws is these wipes. Is that you have Brody looking out to sea and someone walks in front of Brody that creates a wipe. And as they walk in front of Brody, we cut to Brody's POV and that person is walking out of frame. So here's how this came about. Was Spielberg went, I really wish I could do this all in one shot. I want it to feel like one shot. But it's really not possible to shoot the ocean and shoot the person looking at the ocean in the same shot and see his face. And so this idea of these wipes was this way of making it feel like it's all happening as one thing. It's all connected. Here's a weird thing about the wipes that I discovered because I wanted to steal this technique for a movie I was making in film school. And so I did the wipes. But here's the thing. So if you're looking at me and someone walks in front of me right to left, and then I switch to the opposite angle to my point of view, that person who walked right to left will now appear to look like they're walking left to right.
Yeah.
So if you did it correctly, what happens is the person goes halfway into frame, makes a U-turn and moves out of frame the way they came in.
Right.
And so what you actually have to do is you have to have them walking the opposite direction when you do the other direction of the shot.
Right.
Normally in movies, you have everybody do the same thing from every angle so everything matches. And this you can't. And so they're actually doing things backwards. So these wipes are happening and it's focusing us on Brody and Brody's experienced. And this old guy comes up.
Hey, Mike, I know you got a lot of problems downtown, but I've got a couple of problems with the house I wish you could take care of.
That's Mrs. Taft's husband, Mr. Taft. Yeah.
And of course, it doesn't matter what he's talking about.
No.
We don't care.
No.
Because we were like, Brody is trying to watch the ocean because he's scared of the shark.
Yeah.
And the choice in this shot is that we're over the guy's shoulder towards Brody, and Brody's totally obscured, but the guy is out of focus in the foreground. And so when Brody's head pops up, it's in focus, and we're really on him thinking about what he's seeing,
I mean, the way he uses this technique throughout the movie is just fantastic. It's just so good.
Well, because then what we cut to next is what's called a split diopter shot. So now we're in Brody's POV.
Yeah.
Focus is always an issue with depending on your lensing and stuff like that. So it's hard to get things that are really, really close to camera and things that are really far from camera, both in focus.
Yeah.
So with this shot, it's a split diopter, which means there's the lens is split in half and you have two different focal lengths on each side of the lens. And so the dude in the foreground is in focus.
Yes.
The space in the middle is out of focus.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the person way in the background is in focus, the girl.
Yeah.
Because we don't care what this dude is saying. Yeah. We're totally not there. The girl screams. Marty stands up, and it's just some guy lifting her on his shoulders, so it's a false alarm. Right. And we see more people go swimming, and then this old guy shows up with a hat.
Yeah, the guy who was just swimming under the heavier woman, he thought he might be a shark.
That's right.
He comes up and sits down, and then he ridicules him.
We know all about you, Chief. You don't go in the water at all, do you?
Some bad hat, Harry.
And the guy storms away, which I think is great. It's a great moment. And it also reiterates the fact that he is not an islander. He is an outsider, and they know he's an outsider, and they kind of ride him for it, which I think is another way of establishing his sense of unsettledness throughout this film.
You know what's interesting about this is that the reality, Brody's the only person who knows what's going on. Like,
Right.
I don't think did he tell Ellen about the shark attack?
I feel like she did because he did because she's like,
oh, you're right,
worried about the boys going in the water.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
But other than that, nobody knows. And so they're looking at Brody
Well,
acting all
nobody
nervous.
officially knows because I know that medical the ME guy knows.
Sure.
Yes.
I am certain that the mayor turned to the ME and his assistant and says, let's not spread this around.
Yes. Don't say a damn word.
Don't tell anything. And so all these other people, they look at Brody and go, oh, there's that New Yorker who's scared of the water.
Right.
Which he is that person.
Yes.
But they don't know that he's focused on a whole other thing, you know?
Right.
And it's just all the little things. There's kids screaming and playing in the water, and that sets him off.
Yeah.
You know, like he sees people moving around, and now we hear the guy calling for his dog.
Pippet! Pippet! Pippet!
And I think that's it's not subtle. I mean, we're aware of it, but it's still small. You know, we're kind of like, wait, the shark didn't get the dog, did it?
Yeah.
And we cut to the stick floating, which is another key detail.
I mean, killing a dog, bro.
I know, but they never really discuss it.
No.
But by the way, speaking of weird things that people do, Pippet's grave is on Martha's Vineyard, and people visit it and leave flowers for Pippet the dog's grave.
Shut the fuck up. What? The actual dog?
Yes, the actual dog. The actor dog that played the role was named Pippet.
Get out of here.
No, this is crazy, man. So, and by the way, of all of these little details of life, little Sean, who's the other son, singing the Muffin Man and playing in the sand.
Pippet! Come on, Pippet! Pippet!
It's just really scary. It's just really, it's not scary. Scary's not even the right word. It's just innocent, human, normal life when some horrible thing's about to happen.
Yes. Yeah.
And then finally, after all this time, and it's particular, I think, after seeing the stick floating and hearing the guy call for Pippet, because when the stick is floating, the guy's calling for Pippet, the shark is here.
Yes.
And so the next thing we do is we cut to the underwater shot, and there is the music.
Yeah.
And those shots of looking up at the legs, real scary. And we see it coming towards Alex, and the music builds. And I think the shot of Alex getting hit by the shark is so weird. Literally, I go, every time I see it, and I've seen it a million times, what the fuck is that?
It's horrible. Because the size of the fins and all of that, and seeing the actor shoot up out with blood spewing out of the water, like it is all just so horrible. It's horrible in a different way than it is with Chrissy, because it's a child and you're so helpless, and you see people see it, they react to it, and so you hear these lines from people on the shore there going like, "Did you see that? What is? Oh my God, yes! What is that?" And then everybody freaks out running out of the water because the blood is in the water.
So initially when they shot it, so they have Alex on the raft, and they wanted to do this all just real. Yeah. And so they say, you're going to be out on the raft is going to puncture, blood is going to shoot up, and we want you to throw your arms up and then sink down underwater. Something like that.
Yeah.
And if they have outtakes of it, whoever created the fucking blood cannon in this case, they overdid it. It's like in Butch Cassidy's, like, you got enough dynamite there, Butch? Because the blood shoots
spewing. This is like SNL
30
level.
feet in the air on this outtake.
Yeah.
It's like, and the kid, you can see he kind of goes, it just looks, and they go, okay, we're going to do it differently. But what they did basically do is that when the blood hit, and after they did this first test, it took like 3 hours for the blood to clear out of the ocean. There's no way to clean blood from ocean water on a beach.
Exactly.
You just have to wait. And it took a really long time. So the second take, basically they have two dudes with a scuba tank under the water, and they punctured the thing, and those dudes reached up and grabbed Alex and pulled him down under the water hard, and then stuck a regulator in his mouth so he could breathe.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's how they did that.
It's brutal. It's a brutal scene, man. It is so... It's even more, I think it's even more horrible in a way because it's in public in front of everybody in the daytime, you know? Yeah.
Well, the difference, I mean, look, Chrissy seemed like a lovely girl.
Yes.
But the difference between that and the kid that's talking to his mom and she didn't want him to go back in the water, you know, it's really rough. And and I also think it's the build, because the build is normal, false alarm, normal, false alarm, normal, everything's nothing, and then boom, you know?
Well, how do you get an audience to hate a thing and be in terror of a thing? You have it kill innocent people, like a young free-spirited woman right off the bat, and then this child, by the way, who's wearing blood red trunks, which is kind of a foreshadowing. And you see that, so the audience is now like, oh my God, it's attacked these two kind of innocent creatures. And now we're even more invested in the horror of this, but also in trying to, what are we going to do? What are they going to do?
I'm glad you brought up the bathing suit, because that's one of Spielberg's other choices. Is there, if you watch the first half of the movie before we go out on the orca, there's almost no red. There is Spielberg wanted red to be the blood. And so if you look at the town, you look at the costume design, you look at the color of the cars, the color of, art on the walls, there is very, very little red in Jaws except blood. And we also should mention one of the other, huge technical things is the next moment, because when Brody sees Alex get hit by the shark, we do that Zolly, which is, we've talked about it a ton now, but the camera pushing in with the zoom coming back, and it is one of the most iconic shots in Jaws.
And the music. Like, that is great. Just great.
And I love Brody's jumps up, runs straight towards the water, and his little toes stop right at the water's edge, That's a great catch, Steve. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And people are running out, and we see some people are being dragged out, and there's a lot of panic. And then we see Miss Kittner's, Alex's mom, come forward. All we see is the bloody, torn up raft.
Yeah. So let me ask you, you've done a few shark documentaries, and so now you which you've talked about on this first part. And, a lot of people say, well, why do sharks attack surfers, attack people? And the common thing that I've heard, and you can clarify this for me, please, is that it's because they look like seals, or they look like these creatures in the water. They don't necessarily look like human beings, because sharks don't go hunting for human beings. So is that true? And so the kid in the raft could look like something different than the kids in the water swimming around, because why does he attack Alex? And is it because with the raft, it's almost in the shape of a seal or some kind of large water mammal that it knows from its own instinct to attack?
So first of all, the first thing to start with is that we should point out that this is very, very rare.
Shark attacks.
Yes, shark attacks. Yes. And I don't like the word shark attack, because most of the time they don't eat them. And I'll go into what I mean by that in a moment. But like, so first, this is like, the numbers are something like maybe 8 to 12 people killed a year by sharks.
Right.
So this is almost like, for instance, so this is Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. There was, I think 3 or 4 years ago, the first fatal shark attack in all of waters off of Massachusetts since 1937. So this is why this is so rare. I mean, that's like 90 years between fatal shark incidents. Right. So to answer your question, so sharks are opportunity hunters. So they're swimming around on the bottom, and they look up, and they're looking for a silhouette that matches a seal or an elephant seal or something like that. So in particular, like a surfboard, which has kind of an oblong shape, and you have 2 little feet on the back of it, and silhouetted from the sun, that could kind of be like an elephant seal or a big seal or something like that. Right. And so they come up fast, and by the time they get there, maybe they notice that it's not what they thought it was, but then they hit it, and you get hit by a 2,000-pound shark. Right. That's a big deal. The other element, though, is also, I don't know if I'm sure you've been around a puppy, and a puppy is playing with you, and it puts its teeth on your arm, and it's kind of gnawing, because that's play. Well, and dogs and most animals that don't have opposable thumbs, they feel things with their mouth. Right. That's how they learn what that is.
Yes. Babies do.
Yeah. Yeah. Like this is something that Hoover said on the shark documentary, my partner, but he said, like, if you go into a pond.
If you go wading in a pond and a bunch of little minnows start biting at your toes, aren't they cute, is what you might say. But if the minnow weighs 5,000 pounds, it isn't so cute. The behavior is the same. In one case, it tickles. In the other case, it's fatal.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that because what happens is the shark goes, what's that? And it puts its mouth on it. Right. But it's got really sharp teeth and hugely strong jaws. And so that could be, and then it gets that arm in its mouth and it goes, oh, that's not food. And it drops the arm and swims away. Right. That's why I go, like, the word attack is a weird word. That person might very well die. Right. They just lost their arm and they're in the ocean. So they're in deep, deep shit. Yeah. But the shark wasn't attacking them. The shark was just going, what's that? But that being said, but it's still fucking scary. I mean, it doesn't, it's like, I mean, as you might know, among the most dangerous animal in the world to humans is mosquitoes, because mosquitoes
Yes.
are millions of deaths through malaria and other tropical disease and stuff. The most dangerous mammal to humans, I believe, well, dogs kill tons of people. Hippos. Hippos are super fucking dangerous.
Hippos. Wow.
Hippos. Yeah. So like I said, sharks, 8 to 12 people killed a year. Hippos, I think it's like 600, 800 people killed a year.
Wow.
Yeah. Do not fuck with a hippo, man. Wow. And this is the thing, is that any big animal is really, really dangerous.
Yeah.
You know, that doesn't mean their intention is to be dangerous. Hippos, I understand, are mean.
Yeah.
So just, anyway, it's just digression. But yes, so it is certainly conceivable that a shark could see Alex on that raft and go, what's that?
Right.
You know, the shark in Jaws that is territorial and evil and hunting humans for fun, which is what it kind of feels like.
Yes.
That's not real.
Right.
You know?
That doesn't normally happen. Yes.
So A, with that information on sharks, and B, now that really the whole town realizes that there is a shark out there, I think it's a good time to end part 1 of our exploration of Jaws. Of course, we'd love to hear what you think about this classic film. You can visit us on our Facebook page, or if you're into X, it's Cine_Files. It's the Cine-Files podcast on Instagram. You can buy or stream Jaws along with every other movie we've ever reviewed on Cine-Files.net. You could support the show at patreon.com/the Cine-Files, as well as Apple Podcast if you're an Apple person. And you can subscribe to the show at every single podcast platform, as far as I know. And if that podcast platform has a spot for you to leave a review, we would like them. Yeah. And you know what? Even if it's a 1-star review and you want to tell us what's wrong with us, we're happy to read that as well. So please leave your reviews, but please make them 5 stars, not 1 stars. I was kidding about that first thing. And if you want to reach me, it's SR Morris on Twitter, SR Morris1 on Instagram. John, how about you?
Yeah, you can always reach me at The Rocha Says, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and Threads. And of course, my YouTube channel, youtube.com/John Rocha Says, as we are becoming the John Rocha channel next week. So we will officially be a new dawn on that channel. Would love to have you all come aboard and enjoy all the content that we have on there, featuring some of the guests who've been on the Cine-Files.
And that's it for this week. And we'll be back next week to continue our deep dive into Jaws.